right, welcome to another episode of Coding with Noah. I'm Noah, and today we're going to be building a mortgage calculator, which I have right here. And what this allows you to do is update the number of years your mortgage will be, the interest rate, and everything just calculates. And the idea in this app is reactivity. So what that means is that when one value changes, like the year, all the other values, like the monthly payment, the total paid, and the interest paid, update. Same thing for the interest rate or the loan amount. So that's what we're going to be building, a mortgage calculator. And we're going to be using Svelte to do that. And we're going to be using reactive variables. So let's take a look at some examples of reactive variables. So if you go to the reactive declarations, and I'll put a link to this in the YouTube video, you can see an example. So we have right here a variable called count, and we're setting it equal to 1, and we're outputting it in the button, which is why you see count 1. And then we have another variable, which is a reactive variable called double, and double is going to multiply count times 2, and every time count changes, double will get recalculated. And then we have another variable called quadruple, and quadruple will change every time or get recalculated every time double gets changed. And you can see here we have count times 2 equals doubled, and doubled times 2 equals quadruple. So if I increase this, everything gets multiplied by 2. And that's a reactive variable, and we'll be using this concept throughout the mortgage app, which is pretty cool. And the other thing I wanted to show you is binding. So I'm just going to delete this stranger thing, and we'll just say name. And the way it works is that the value in this input is bound to the variable name. So bind value will bind the value to the variable name. So if I change the variable name right here to Bill, you can see Bill gets outputted here. Hello, Bill. And you can also see that Bill gets updated here. So this value, or the value in the variable name, updates the input value name. And it also works the other way. So if the value in this input changes, so does the variable. So it's two ways, both toward the variable and both toward the input. And we'll be using this to keep track of our loan amount or interest rate and all sorts of things like that. So that's pretty cool. So let's get started. And the other thing, and I almost forgot to go over this, so I'm sorry, is we're going to be using a CSS library called Skeleton CSS. Has a really nice grid system, and it's just going to add some basic styling to our app. You can read more about it, and we'll be using a CDN for this because it's really easy to use a CDN. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Visual Code, and I'm going to put this on one side of the screen. Oops, before I do that, I need to open up Visual Code. So let me open it up. And now I'm going to put this on one side of the screen. So it'll be easier for us to see. And give me 1 second. And there we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Svelte, and we're going to copy this command. But before we do that, let's create our project. So I'm going to File, Open, and I'm going to go to I'm going to navigate to my projects folder, Svelte, YouTube. Sorry about that. And I'm going to create a new folder called Mortgage Calc. And I'll just name mine too because I already have a mortgage calc, probably from a previous build. No big deal. So I'm going to delete this one because I don't need it. I'm just going to rename this mortgage calc. So you can name your folder whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. And that'll open it up. And then I'm going to shorten this up, and I'm going to go to terminal and create a new terminal. And in here, I'm going to clone the Svelte template library or Svelte starter, and I'm going to clone it in to the folder that I'm currently in Visual Code. Then I'm going to run npm install. That'll install all the dependencies. And once that's done, I will clear so that you can see it better, and I'll do run npm run dev, which will turn on our dev server, and hopefully everything's working, and it is. So that's pretty awesome. So the first thing we're going to do is clean everything up, and let's do that. So we basically want to delete all of this. So let's do that and delete that. So we don't need it. We're also going to delete the props. We don't need to pass in any props to the app component. This target is basically telling which HTML element this app component should control. In our case, we're letting it control the body. And then if we go to our public folder, we're going to want to delete all of our global CSS, which gets included into our index.html. And we're going to change the title to mortgage calculator. So do that. And it updated. You can't really read it, but it does say mortgage calculator. And before we're done with this, let's go ahead and copy our skeleton CSS. We don't need to use the minified version because this isn't a production app. So we'll just copy the regular one, which isn't super big anyway. And we'll paste that in, and there we go. And then what I like to do is I like to inspect the element, go to network, and just make sure that everything downloads. And it looks like everything is downloading. We're not getting any 404s. So that's pretty awesome. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start building our app. So let's do that. So we're going to need a main with a container, and a container is a special class in Skeleton that allows you to basically adjust the width. So if it's a super small screen, I think it's like 90% of the screen, and if it's a large screen, it'll adjust it to like 70% of the screen, but you'll have to read up on it. So that's the first thing. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a row, and we're going to create an H1 tag. We're going to say mortgage calculator. Let's save that and see what that looks like. Good. So now we're going to create another row, and this one is going to contain our input for the loan amount. So we'll do a label. We don't need the for because we're not submitting anything. We'll say loan amount, and we'll do an input with a class of u full width. So it'll take up the full width of the screen. And we don't want this to be text. We want this to be a number because this is going to be the loan amount. And then I'm going to say the min here is 1,000. And the max, I don't really need a max. Actually, I'll say the min here is 1. Sounds a little silly, but we'll just leave it at 1. And that should do it. Oh, and we'll also put a placeholder as well. I forgot that. So placeholder, say enter loan amount. Okay, so now we can see that. That's looking good. Next thing we need is a div with a row. And this one, we're going to have a div columns. And we want to take up 6 columns. Sorry about that. And this is going to contain our first slider. So let's do that. And so this is going to be an input with a range. So that'll create a slider. And we want to take up the full width. Enter. And this is going to be our year slider. And we'll give it a label as well so that people know what it is. We'll say years. Let's save that. And we don't need the name or the ID. And let's also make this a little bit bigger so that's a little bit more readable. And what we do need though, is a min, which we'll say is 1, and a max, I'm going to say 40, but we'll say 50. It's a pretty long amount for alone time. And we've got our slider. It seems to be working well. Next, we need a place to output our slider. So I'm going to do another div, columns, and 6. And I'm going to create a special class called outputs. And we're just going to say 15 years. And let's see what that looks like. Okay. So I have some special CSS that I have right in our to-do. So we're going to copy this. We're going to put this in here. And that'll just add some styling. So it'll increase the font size, put a border, but I want this to be, we'll make this explicit solid black, 2 pixels, and a margin of 15 top, so that'll push it down a little bit and it'll center the text. Let's see what that looks like. So 15 years. So that looks really, really good. The only thing that we need to do is we want this to be dynamic so that when this value changes, the years change. So to do that, we're going to create a variable called years. So we're going to say let years equals 15 because that's where we want it to start off, because ideally you'll have a 15-year mortgage if you can afford it. And then we'll do find value like we did in the example, and we'll say years. See what that does. And I actually want this to be lowercase years. That looks a little better. And then hopefully if I move this slider, that will change. Oops, it won't change because we need to wrap it in curly braces so that Svelte knows it's a variable. And so now that sorry, so 15, and then you need to say years like that. So this is the variable years, so that'll be, it's outputted, and this is just hard coded. So we do that, it looks like that. Looks pretty good. Let me just make sure I'm spelling years right. I just want to make sure. I know I'm a little paranoid. Okay, yeah, looks like I am spelling years correctly. So that's good. So that looks pretty good. And while we're here, let's go ahead and create a loan amount variable. So loan amount, and let's set that equal to 200,000. So we'll say that's our mortgage. Then I'm going to say we're going to do the same thing, bind value loan amount. And that updates it here. And then anytime this loan amount changes in the input, this variable will be updated. So that's really cool. So next thing we need to do is we need to copy this. I'll make this a little bit more readable. And so yeah, so we need to copy this whole row and do it for our interest rate. So we'll do that. So I'm going to change this to interest rate. And this one's going to be a little different. So the min will be 1, but the max will be 2,000. And the reason is that we want people to be able to specify a point interest rate. And instead of binding it to years, we're going to create another variable. And this variable will be called interest rate input. And we'll set it to 200. So let's see. So yeah, so that'll be 200. And then this will be a percentage. And we'll delete this right here. So basically, the reason we did 2,000, because I don't think I explained it clearly, is that we want to be able to do a point interest rate. So we're going to divide this by 100. So this will be our first example of a reactive variable in our application. So we're going to take this interest rate, and we're going interest rates input, and we're going to calculate the actual interest rate. So we're going to do interest rate, and we're going to set it to interest rate input divided by 100. And then in here, we're going to output the interest rate like so. And let's see what that looks like. Looks okay, but I want it to be 0.00. So in Svelte, you can just, or in JavaScript, you can just use this toFixed method and put 2, and that'll always output the number of the number of decimal places. And then if I move the slider, you can see everything updates. So that's looking good. So we're looking good. The next thing we need to do is we need to do all our the output. So we need to do the monthly payments, total payments, and the total paid and the amount of interest paid. So let's do the monthly payments. So we can do a row, and then we're going to use our outputs class. We're going to say monthly payments. We'll save that. And then we're going to do another, copy 3 of those down, total payments. And then we're going to do, what would the other one be? Interest. Yeah, interest paid. Okay. So that's looking good. So in order to calculate our monthly payments, we're going to need the total amount of monthly payments, and we're going to need the monthly interest rate. So let's start with the total amount of monthly payments. So these are all going to be reactive variables. So the first one is that I'll let you try to do the total amount of monthly payments. So that would be the years times the number of months in a year. So see if you can create a reactive variable called total payments. That'll be the total payments that will be paid during the loan. I'll pause for a second. Go. Okay. So quick challenge, total payments, and that's going to equal years times 12. The next thing we're going to need is our monthly interest rate, and that's going to be our interest rate. See if I can spell interest rate divided by 100, so that'll turn it into the decimal form. And then we want to divide that by 12. And then we need a really, really weird interest calculation formula. So I'm going to pause the video and just copy that in. So give me 1 second, and I'll be back in 1 second. All right, we're back, and this is the really weird formula that you need to use. I basically got it from here, and it's just super, super confusing. So, but that's the formula to calculate the monthly payments, or what the monthly payment would be. So we'll just call it monthly payment. We'll save that, and then we can output it right here. Say monthly payment. And let's save that. And you can see we get this weird formatted number. So we don't actually want that. What we want is we want it to be formatted into USD. So I found this really helpful Stack Overflow post that I'll post. And there's this Intel, which stands for International Number Formatter. So we want to copy that, and we want to paste that right here. And this formatter will basically take any decimal point and format it into a pretty looking number format. So that's what we want. So if we go here and inside the curly braces, we do formatter.format and save that. We should see a nice looking value. So now when we change the number of years, you can see the payment goes down. But of course, the interest rate and the other things will go up. So that'll be your next challenge, is to figure out what is the total amount paid, and then to use the formatter to format it into a nice amount. So let me actually change this instead of total payments to total paid. So that makes a little bit more sense. Yeah, so see if you can output the total paid, and I'll be back. All right, I'm back. So hopefully you were able to figure that out. So that would be another reactive variable. So we would do monthly payments, or I mean total paid. Total paid equals monthly payment times the total payments, total number of payments. And let's see what's going on. Hopefully, maybe there's some error. Looks like there is. Oh, spelled payments wrong. Sorry. So now we can see that's working. And the only thing left to do is output it. So let's do that. It's like we did before. We'll use our formatter, format. We'll post it in. Sorry about that. And it looks like we forgot an A. Yep, no big deal. And now we have a nice looking total paid format. So now we want to calculate the interest paid. And the way we do that is we take the total paid and we minus that from the loan amount. So see if you can do that, create a reactive variable to do that. I'll give you a few seconds. Okay, hopefully you were successful. If not, no big deal. I'm going to call this interest paid. And it's going to be the total paid minus the loan amount. So we'll just copy and paste that in. And we will just use our formatter again. Format, and that should work. So now we have our mortgage calculator up and running, which is awesome. The only thing left to do is upload it to GitHub and create a repository. So let's do that. So, all right. So the first thing we're going to do is cancel out of that, and we'll go into our public folder, and we need to make an adjustment to our HTML. So we don't want absolute things for GitHub pages. We want relative links. So we'll make all our links relative. So that does that. The next thing we'll do is we'll install a package, which is right here. And it's called GitHub Pages. I'll put a link to that. And that allows us to easily upload to GitHub. So I'm going to do a clear so we can see it. And we'll do an npm install dash save dev gh pages. And that should install it as a dev dependency. All right. So now that we have that done, we need to go to our rollup file and we need to import it. So we'll import gh pages from GitHub pages, and we'll go to right here. And this is for when we're building production. We want to upload to GitHub pages. So we'll do GitHub pages.publish, and we want to publish the public folder. And we want to console.log here, uploaded to GitHub pages. And every time we build, we'll basically be in production. And the way we know that is that production equals basically when we're not watching rollup. If we look at our package.json, you can see right here when we build, we're not watching, we don't have the -w, so it's in production. Thus, it will publish to GitHub pages. So pretty cool. So the next thing we need to do is actually go to our GitHub pages. So create a repository. So I'm going to do that right now. And let's see, call this Svelte mortgage calc YouTube. And we'll create the repository. And we will init. We'll git add the dot, and we'll commit, and we'll clear so we can see it. We'll add the remote. Don't add mine, add yours. Add your URL, and we'll push up. And hopefully that will show us our thing. Okay, cool. So in theory, if all this worked, and I hope it did, hope it does, we should just be able to do npm run build, and it should just publish to GitHub. It's taking a little bit, so that probably means it worked. So we'll wait a second. Okay, uploaded it to GitHub. So now if I go to my settings and I go here, I'll hopefully see a URL, and I do. And that's not working. It's okay. Maybe it's not ready. Okay, it looks like it's ready now. I wonder. Yeah, there's some extreme caching going on. So usually, sometimes it does this, but so when it does, like you have to just specify the index.html. I don't know why sometimes you have to do that, but you can see our app is up and running, and we just published to GitHub pages. That's a nice little mortgage calculator app for you, and everything's updating. And yeah, so I hope you learned about reactive variables. Hope you had a great time. And if you have any feedback, please let me know. And if you have any ideas for future Svelte videos or other videos, let me know. And I will catch you on the flip side. Catch you all later.